going to talk about independent and dependent clauses, which are the building blocks of good sentences. Unfortunately, even though they have the word clause in them, they don't have anything to do with Santa Claus. So, all clauses have both a subject and a verb. That's what a clause means. Keep in mind that a group of words without a subject and a verb is a phrase, not a clause. So a couple of phrases, not clauses, would be something like to the market, after lunch, and throwing the ball. So that's a phrase, but what's a clause? A clause sounds like we cooked dinner, after we had studied, and the students cleaned up. All of those have both a subject and a verb. Independent clauses contain both a subject and a verb, and they can stand on their own as a complete sentence. No extra information is needed. You could think about them like independent people. They don't need help from anybody. They are good on their own. In fact, oftentimes you can identify an independent clause just by the sound of it, because we're so used to listening for information. We do it all the time. So, when you hear an independent clause, you can identify it by saying, does it sound like a complete thought, or are you still listening for more? If somebody says to you, I lived in Texas, that's a complete thought. Your mind registers that as a total package sentence, and you can say, okay, you lived in Texas. But if somebody says to you, before we moved here, there's something at the beginning of that sentence that makes you want to know more. It makes you not feel like you have the full story. So that's a dependent clause. Now, dependent clauses do have a subject and a verb, but they are needy. They cannot stand alone. So what made them this way? They weren't always this way. Dependent clauses do have that core subject and verb that makes them a clause. However, there's something at the beginning, a subordinate conjunction that kind of glopped on to the beginning of their clause and created this dependence. So down below, you can see some common subordinate conjunctions. They're very basic words. You already know all of them, and you use them all the time. But now you know that these are the conjunctions that create dependent clauses. If you look at this visually, you can see that the pictures we're seeing have two small clauses that are joined by a subordinate conjunction. So you can see the idea my mom smiled and I made dinner is joined by the conjunction when. And the idea that I read and I love stories is joined by the subordinate conjunction because. A couple more examples just to help you out visually. 3 dependent clauses before the work is completed, when it was time to leave, and because we don't know the outcome. These would all be independent clauses if not for the subordinate conjunction at the start. So just to wrap up, both independent and dependent clauses have a subject and verb pair. One of each of them is often joined together to create a longer sentence. This is called a complex sentence. Independent clauses can stand alone as a simple sentence. Dependent clauses always have a conjunction at the front, but they still don't have anything to do with Santa Claus. Sorry, Santa.